So, Assassin's Creed Hexe. We know the tone they're aiming for. Witch Trial era dread, German-speaking Europe vibes, and that heavy history is the horror atmosphere Ubisoft teased. But here's the thing, when a game says Witch Trials, that could mean 100 places across Europe and a couple hundred years of ugly history. And that's exactly why I'm going to get specific, because there's one location and one window where the pieces line up way too neatly with what we've seen. I'm talking about Würzburg, and roughly the late 1620s into 1631, with 1625 as a believable spark year to start the story. To be clear, this is still a theory. Ubisoft has not confirmed Würzburg, but if you like theories built on real history instead of vibes and a haunted TikTok sound, you're going to enjoy this. Let's rewind to September 2022. Ubisoft drops that short teaser: forest, barking dogs, the talisman, and then the circle. Everyone stared at that pentagram, obviously, but the outer ring is what matters. People decoded it as the assassin's maxim: we work in the dark to serve the light. Written in an early modern occult-style script, often associated with the Renaissance esoteric alphabets. Now, the inner writing is where things get spicy. The most common reading fans landed on included Mephisto, plus words that look like revenge and house. Mephisto as in Mephisto Elise, that's not some generic spooky Latin aesthetic, that's German cultural DNA. And the barking dogs, sure, it can be hunting dogs, but in Witch Trial Paranoia, dogs aren't background ambiance. They're pressure, they're pursuit, they're the sound of someone's coming. Witch hunts happened all over Europe, but there are a few places where the panic turned into a machine. And the reason Würzburg stands out is that it's not just bad, it's systemized. Würzburg, south of Germany, you're in the orbit of the Holy Roman Empire, and the backdrop is the 30 Years' War. Religion, politics, famine, fear, the perfect storm. Würzburg itself was a prince, Bischofric, meaning the guy in charge isn't just a church leader, he's also the ruler. That's religion and state fused into one creature. Meet Philip Adolf von Ehrenberg. He ruled Würzburg from 1623 to 1631, and under his watch the prosecutions escalated into one of the most extreme crackdowns in the region. The exact total depends on what area you're counting and what records survived. What we can say safely is hundreds were executed, and mainly historical summaries describe totals reaching into the high hundreds when counting the broader territory. And it wasn't just random peasants. This hysteria hit wide. Officials, clergy, and children. One of the most chilling periods details is an August 1629 letter described mass imprisonment and accusations, including children as young as 3 or 4 being implicated. 3-year-olds. This wasn't justice. It was a self-feeding system. Torture produces confessions. Confessions produce names. Names produce arrest. And here's the missing link that makes it feel real. In these trials, confessions weren't just admissions. They were treated like a production line. You weren't just expected to confess. You were pressured to name accomplices, because the whole system rewarded expanding the net. So the machine doesn't need evidence. It needs momentum. Now here's where the theory gets even more convincing. Even if Ubisoft isn't doing a literal one-to-one Würzburg simulator, they love blending history into a playable format. And Würzburg has a historical cousin that's basically running the same nightmare software in the background. That cousin is Bamberg. Same region, similar timing, similar mechanism, similar... This got so big it turned into infrastructure. So the strongest version of this theory isn't even, it must be Würzburg or it's wrong. It's Franconia in the late 1620s. With Würzburg as the core inspiration and Bamberg-style elements stitched in to make the city dense, varied, and playable, which is very Ubisoft. Honestly, they don't photocopy history, they remix it. And before someone comments, what about other places? Yes, there are other candidates. Trier, Fulda, Ekstadt. All real, all horrific, all plausible. But Würzburg's advantage is the combo: scale, political structure, documented machine behavior, and a clean endpoint tied to the war. It's not the only possible setting, it's the most Assassin's Creed friendly setting. So why does Würzburg fit Hexe as a plausible setting? First, scale and containment. Assassin's Creed loves big history, but it needs a playground that can feel claustrophobic and controlled. Würzburg gives you an urban core and surrounding territory under one ruler, with paranoia in the air like smoke. Second, the Templar logic. In AC lore, Templars love order through control. What better cover for consolidating power than manufacturing a hidden enemy and making yourself the only protection against it? Third, the assassin angle. Here's the key twist of the theory. What if some of the witches are people connected to the Brotherhood? People who know too much or people refusing to bend. Now you've turned a witch panic into assassin versus Templar proxy war, where the Templars don't need to find assassins, they just need to make the public fear secrecy itself. And the story endpoint writes itself. The trials don't resolve because everyone suddenly calmed down and become normal. The political situation changes, and in 1631 the Swedish side enters Würzburg's story in a major way, tied to Gustavus Adolphus and the broader war momentum. And I like that as an ending, because it's not clean, it's not, yay, we saved the city, it's one horror getting interrupted by another. That fits Hexe's tone perfectly. Now, gameplay. There have been reports and leaks claiming Hexe borrowed Fear-style inspiration from the Assassin's Creed Syndicate approach, and that the game leans more psychological. If I mention things like a protagonist name, possession mechanic, or specific systems, that's leak territory, not Ubisoft confirmation. But if those leaks are even half true, this setting is perfect. You're not fighting an army, you're fighting a society that's been trained to suspect you. So you weaponize the myth. You stage impossible events. You make witch hunters afraid of their own shadows. You use fear like a tool because historically, fear is what powered the system in the first place. Even animal scouting or stealth-heavy infiltration mechanics would make sense here because you'd need intel without being seen. In a setting where being noticed is half the death sentence, observation becomes a combat. So, will it actually be Würzburg? We don't know. Ubisoft hasn't confirmed the exact setting, but Würzburg and that wider Franconia cluster gives them everything: a contained, terrifying power structure, an era where fear becomes policy, and a historical endpoint that naturally closes the story. If this theory is right, Hexe won't just be dark for Assassin's Creed. It could be the first one that feels like horror because the history underneath it is horror. Not fantasy horror, like human horror. So what do you think? Würzburg or blended Franconia setting? Drop your theories below.